Deep voice for puppy dogs and males. Shirtle. Thank you for coming back after lunch. Hopefully you're satiated with all that wonderful food. I'm going to let you know what you're in for, so you have a contract with us that you understand. Number one, plenary session. We don't have 12 chairs and microphones, so 4 of the workshop leaders from this morning and this afternoon will be commenting on the one priority action that the 12 different workshops have produced, and we'll have it on the screen when that's required. We'll do it in 2 parts, 2-act play. We'll do the first, I think there's 6, and then we'll do the second 6. The other workshop leaders who are still in the audience can comment at the end of the commentary from this official panel. The informal panel and the other workshop leaders can comment or ask questions from the floor, and there'll be a chance for the delegates to also do the same. After the plenary session and the articulation of the 12 priorities that came out of the 12 workshops, with a Q&A and comments from the floor included, we will then call for the actioneers who signed up on those action sheets to come down and get their Actioneer badges and get a photo op while Lois explains what the next step is for the Actioneers. I'll let you know about a couple of things that are happening after the close. 2 things. One is an opportunity to meet some of the mentors for the Actioneers if they want to, just introduce themselves, and then it will be done online. And the rare and endangered walk of the campus will also occur at the close of the meeting for 15 minutes if you want to go on that wander. Then we'll have the closing, the thank yous, and we all go on our jolly way. If you haven't voted, allot at least 2 hours to fill out your Senate form. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce the plenary panel, and we'll do the first lot of priority actions from the different groups. Some of them may not have been in that group, but we still want commentary. So I'm going to ask the following people to be our esteemed panel. And it's Robert Pekin, who had a workshop this morning, Catherine Pickering, Fiona Armstrong and Pascal Scherer. And the other workshop leaders, after that we've had our commentary on this, have a chance to comment from their perspective, and you have a chance to either comment or ask questions about the priority actions. So with that in mind, we'll just pass the microphone up and down. There's the list if you want to comment panel on any of those, in particular the one if it relates to your workshop. They might be in the second page that we'll go to in a minute after a Q&A, but feel free. It's almost free for all till 3 o'clock. Is that on? Just while you're switching that on, I have, if you've got pens at the ready, someone asked if you could go online and look at climatesafety.net, which is a petition for emergency scale-up of renewable energy to 100% by the end of 10 years from now. So it's a petition that's already online. They'd like to get 100,000 petitioners, and it's called climatesafety.net. Petition for emergency scale-up of renewable energy to 100% within the next 10 years. And there I go, smashing the technology again. We have a koala binder book, which has been, someone's been taking notes from the different speakers, and this is a lost and found call. Yeah, there is a name, Manindari Singh. Can't make out the last name. Boot and Agricultural Science 2016 Gatton. So if you own that book, or if you want to bid for it, if we can't find the owner, we'll do the auction at the end of the day. It's here and waiting. Okay, and another question which we'll get the answer to perhaps at the end, at the close, is someone wants to know why all the clocks in this infrastructure are an hour behind. So just put that out there. Someone might have an answer by the end of the day. Yeah, maybe that's why we've been late all day. Who knows? Okay, over to you.
So number one was to investigate the formation of a buyers club tapping into local farmers and spreading the word to the community about the benefits. So this was in my workshop around food hubs. So buyers clubs are like autonomous buying groups or cooperatives where they basically create a food system around their needs and the needs of the planet. And so it's Food Connect's goal is a planet where affordable food is accessible by all people, and food hubs are probably the ultimate in this field. They allow people to have that access to food from local farmers, participate in the access to that food, buy it in bulk, so they get it at a good price. They deal with the waste. They choose their own butcher. They choose their own baker. They choose their own whatever it is. They food swap. They drink wine together. So they build community from these buyers clubs, and there's many, many models of buyers clubs. Some are profit driven, some of them are just purely social, but the key ingredient is they're autonomous, and the people who come together to form a buyers club basically decide how they want their food system to look, so they become empowered to run the food system as how it should be run and learn along the way, like you would have heard some of the speakers this morning and particularly in Jerry's conversation this morning about what he's done at Bellis. So that's that, and so there's no buyers clubs down here on the Gold Coast, so it's a really ripe opportunity for buyers clubs to form down here. We've got resources up at Food Connect and Sovereign Foods, and there's 40 buyers clubs in Brisbane and Ipswich, so they've become really big, and they're from 6 people to 200 people. They're on all sorts of scales of size. So someone's going to take that on. What are they called? The Actioneer? An Actioneer is going to take that on.
And Rob, you're a mentor to help that Actioneer.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, terrific. Is there another one on that list?
There is. Yeah. The next one is building food sources in our own gardens, spaces, and collaborate within our group to enable this. Then move into the broader community. So that's the small solutions and then broadening out. I wasn't a part of that workshop, but I know a lot about that. Does anyone here know? Was it part of that workshop? The building small food systems. Do all the food. So I'm presuming that's all about as Jerry said. Although the precursor is Jerry. Jerry's a pretty brilliant gardener, and I think you need to lower your expectations. And he's been practicing it for a long, long time, and he's paid by the ABC to do it, basically. So as I was talking to Brendan earlier, and I said, in these sort of circumstances, it takes a whole community to grow food, and not necessarily the ones and not everyone has a green thumb. So you need to sort of, in these community food growing spaces, you find someone in your community who's really good at growing food in your backyard, and I call it blockyard agriculture, where 1 or 2 people are actually a specialist in your community at growing food in everyone's backyards, and you pay them to do that, or you fundraise for them to do that, and then everyone else surrounds them in the storytelling and the economics and all of the research, like Jerry does himself on his own place. And then that moves into the broader community. It just becomes a ripple effect. Other people go, wow, you're being paid to grow food in other people's backyards. And then that becomes an employment activity in your own local community. So it all comes from that central idea that place-based design, place-based action, place-based living will solve the world's problems. It has to come from place. Why live in an area and enjoy the views and enjoy the surf and enjoy the amenities and not eat from there? That's, a fundamental thing that really gets my pistons pretty pissed off. Anyway, that's that one. Oh, and this one here, production of local farmers, promotion of local farmers. Yeah, it just goes to that point, because food is the #1 contributor to climate change. Food and agriculture and fibre is the #1 contributor to climate change. #1 polluter of our waters, #1 polluter of our land. It is, on the flip side, the solution. And local food systems, because they shorten the food chain, not just by a little bit, by multiples. 71,000 kilometres is the average food basket here in Australia. When you buy it from Food Connect, it's down to around about 3,000 kilometres. So that's multiples of less trucking, less water, more nutrients going into your body, better health, lower health budgets, a whole raft of things just by supporting local farmers.
The next point, is that from someone from a workshop on the panel? Would like to speak to the KPIs? They're all number ones. It's a number one priority. So the KPIs, is someone on this panel in charge of that workshop? No?
I wasn't part of the workshop that's part of.
No, that's fine.
The following one.
Yes, let's do the following one, and someone in the audience will comment when you're finished on that.
So our workshop was about health, so following the plenary from David King talking about the risks to health from climate change. And we talked about in our workshop developing solutions to address that issue, that the risks to health in the community from climate change are not well understood, and they're not well understood by policymakers. So we talked about a campaign that our organisation is developing for a national strategy on climate health and wellbeing at the national level. And we talked about how the group in the room could participate in that effort and some of the things that might be done to address those gaps. So some of the things that were raised were the importance of including climate change in health professional curricula and having training days for health professionals about climate change if they haven't been trained about it at university, making sure that people who are currently in practice are made more aware, and also in the community. There was also suggestions for engaging local hospitals in sustainability initiatives like the Global Green and Healthy Hospitals Network, which there's quite an active network of around 800 hospitals and health services in Australia already participating in that network. And also talked about the need or the opportunity to mobilise doctors and nurses as trusted and respected voices in the community to lobby MPs around climate change and health. However, the priority action that we settled on, you can see we got very specific, was for a health professional training day to be organised, and we had an offer from someone at Griffith University to work with other local partners and to invite other local health stakeholders to come together in a public forum that would talk about the health impacts of climate change and what people can do, and there's potentially an opportunity to respond to the discussion paper on the topic.
We'll jump to the last topic. Is someone on this panel, was that part of their workshop, the changing the language of climate change? No. So what we'll do is, would the person's workshop leader who did number 4 or number 1 build on existing sustainability program? Are they still in the room? The workshop leader or an actioneer from that workshop? Yep, there we go. So can we have the microphone right up the back there? And could you speak to that point, please?
Thank you. Hello, my name's Heather Boedo, and I'm a social worker from Charles Sturt University in Wagga. We found the members of our group were from multidisciplinary backgrounds. And so as a group, we decided that we wanted to make a real difference in our organisations. We know that our organisations already have, recycling programs and new initiatives that are happening at that policy level. But actually when the rubber hits the road, we agree that actually that's not quite happening, particularly in health and welfare, because we're interested in knowing, okay, how can a social worker or a psychologist or a nurse or a healthcare worker practice in a way, with clients and with patients that's going to promote sustainability and health and well-being. So we decided that we could all go back to our multidisciplinary organisations and try to advocate and promote ways or systemic change within our organisation for our managers and supervisors to to genuinely look at ways of, addressing this on the front line, so to speak. Not just about having a recycling bin under your desk, but actually about frontline health and welfare practice.
Thank you. And thank you for coming all the way. Was it Wagga Wagga? Thank you. We really appreciate that. Welcome. They didn't check your visa at the border? New South Wales is really good to Queensland. They give us all their sand. We have wonderful sand islands, and anything that blocks that sand movement is a major imposition on the health of our islands, from the Spit, South Straddie, North Straddie, Moreton Islands and Fraser Island. So can you thank New South Wales for giving us their sand for free? The final point, who was in charge of that workshop? And we'll get them to speak to that. Where are we? Up the back again? Terrific. Introduce yourself again and let's see that final topic.
Hi, I'm Sally Gillespie. I'm from Psychology for a Safe Climate. And in our workshop, we're really looking at the more psychological and emotional undercurrents that are often present in climate change discussions of all sorts. The people in the workshop were from a whole range of situations. So it was about recognising the need for safe space so that people can acknowledge the emotions that often come up when we hear about climate change, as well as the emotions that often erupt when we are in situations of discussions with people who may have different views. People were very interested as to how they can initiate and sustain conversations with people with different views, and what kind of language to use, and how to orientate it around the kind of values that are undercurrents there. I think everyone felt that they needed to be an actioneer in themselves, to go back to friends and family to initiate conversations, and also within the organisations to make that safe space so there can be a pause at times to really acknowledge the kind of feelings that are coming up and what a variety might be in the same room in terms of responding, as well as a sensitivity when talking about climate change to be able to not become over-focused on repeating statistics, but moving along to what can be done. One of the actions that didn't make it up there was that we're looking at putting something, I think, up on the Gecko website. Simone's going to be the actioneer for that, where we can look at putting a whole lot of resources in terms of information around communication and language and psychological support for people engaged with climate change.
Thank you. Well done. So I guess if we see diversity of species as a major strength for the planet Earth, I guess diversity of strategies and diversity of language to explain and educate people is also necessary. There's not just one way, and we need to look at diversifying our communications and our strategies for how we achieve what we want. So thank you for that. Now we're going to open up to the delegates of the conference to either comment or ask questions of anybody who just spoke, and we're going to then go to the other 6 workshop points, of which many of our panel were head of that workshop. So hands up if you have a question or a comment based on the 6 points and priority actions that we just visited then. Someone hands up? No? It's so clear that those actions are required and we're going to implement them. There's no cause for further comment or question. Terrific. Let's go to the next sheet of priority actions, and we will have the people on the panel who haven't spoken to their workshop groups to speak to theirs, and any others that you feel you want to comment on if it's an area of expertise. And if we've visited any of the previous ones or these ones, Rob spoke to 3 of those points, but if you want to complement what Rob said, feel free at the end of this address to also comment or ask questions. So who'd like to go first with this second page of priority actions?
I can comment on some of the tourist.
So this
tourism.
is Pascal speaking.
Pascal,
now?
yeah. The first one, cross-promotion of sustainable tourist destination package deals and networks with local service providers. This is really about clustering, in a sense, that, for example, if a person goes and has an accommodation, uses an accommodation provider, they can then refer those people to a good place, a sustainable place where they can eat locally, where they can do a fantastic tour of the local environment, and so basically bringing together the providers which have similar values and ultimately bringing them together supports them all and provides a local economy that is sustainable also in terms of viability. So a really important point. By the way, there is, if you've heard of the Green Cauldron National Landscape, while the program, National Landscapes programs no longer exists, the feds have stopped the funding. Locally, this is very much some of the mentoring program that they've been focusing on. The third one on that list is to establish or promote Gold Coast Sustainable Tourism Awards, but with a difference. So I guess there are state-based, there are organisation-based tourism awards, but usually it's the organisation putting through a sometimes really refined document. They get a consultant to put it through, and then there's a committee that judges. Here, it's citizens, residents who vote, and to actually make it also a celebration by people were talking about taking a bus, rocking up, experiencing the places, cheering them when they're doing well, actually getting that experience happening. So awards with a difference, as opposed to those who have the most money to pay for somebody to write the best application, getting the awards every year. And that's, that's just being a touch cynical there. Yeah, I don't want to devalue those who have obviously put fantastic effort in and are demonstrating that through the product. So please.
Thanks. And I think Pascal's also borrowing on Rod Quantock's load people up on a bus and go to an unannounced place and celebrate what's happening there. Although that was for comic device, the guest speaker last night at the dinner, you could do it to celebrate and reward tourism operations that are doing really good work. So we might have Rod invited with his rubber chook to go on that tour to the sustainable tourism activities. And Pascal, is there another point you're talking to? Or
not a specific point. I guess it's more general in terms of scale. I think we're talking at so many different scales here in this conference. You have individual actions. You have actions that you can be a leader on in your own family, in your own workplace, in your community, in your local area, in the state, in the country. I encourage you to pick, don't try to be everything, and don't try to be the national leader necessarily from the start. Pick something where you can start and grow from there. Also, look around you, work together with others. And in terms of actions coming out of this conference, ultimately, I assume some of these will hopefully be facilitated to happen by the conference organisers potentially, but there are many sub-actions, obviously, with the Actioneers and so forth, that you can apply to your own contexts. We had in our group, we had tourists, we had hosts, we had operators, we had government people. What we discussed obviously doesn't apply in the same way to everyone, but I'm sure that everyone can have an action that they can apply to their context and go from there.
And if you have an action and you implement it, you feel good. Mate, it's a feel-good thing. Yeah. the natural endorphins kick in. I think we're ready. Catherine, would you like to speak? Yep.
I wasn't involved in the one about the plastic-free month, but I think that's something that's really important for us always to be involved in.
We want to hear more.
Sorry. So the plastic-free month they were talking about on the Facebook page for July, I think that's always something really important to do in a really good and useful way of us doing. And I think having themes to build up our skills, so we focus for a day, a week, a month on a particular action, what that often can do is lead us to have enough change that we then continue a lot of those practices in the longer term. So anything like that's really useful. I'll get Wade at the moment to talk about the one about the TerraCycle, which is up there, which was from your group, I think. But the one that Mark and I, our two groups were discussing, was this issue about leaving a biodiversity legacy to the Gold Coast by increasing the amount of native plants, and with that by supporting native wildlife, and particularly in the lead up to the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. And in that, again, what Pascal's saying about there's the things that we can individually do to start to try and promote the use of native plants in our own gardens, but also in our interactions with other people to show what can be done, and with the Gold Coast Council and school groups and all sorts of things like that. So they talked about a whole lot of specific things that they're bigger programs, but they're also that capacity. And hopefully through initiatives such as Mark's and also the Grow Native app, what that's about is informing people, and this conference has done, about the sharing of information being one of the most powerful things to allow us to know what we can do to make things better.
Thank you. And now I'm going to invite the other workshop facilitators to make further comment if they like. John Mark, would you like to? Yes?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
So I was involved in the workshop where we discussed TerraCycle. So TerraCycle is a company that started in the US about 10 years ago. It's now across 22 different countries, and it relies very heavily on volunteers to bring in or post in what we consider to be non-recyclable items. So things like oral hygiene products, toothbrushes, toothpaste containers, things like that. There's a whole range of programs that TerraCycle run. Through Griffith University, I've been involved in a program that's looked at oral care recycling, so bringing all our toothbrushes and dental floss packaging and all that sort of thing in, sending it off to TerraCycle, and they turn that into park benches and all sorts of cool things. It's a not-for-profit organisation, and the proposal here was to really develop our relationship with TerraCycle through Griffith University, since we've already got a relationship, and perhaps set up a local recycling collection depot for southeast Queensland for all these things that are not typically thought of as being recyclable. In terms of a waste stream, we think this is really important. So rather than producing something, having people buy it and then chucking it in a landfill, the model here is produce something, have people use it, and then have them reuse it or upcycle it into a new product, or recycle it back into a usable product. So making it a more of a cycle rather than a straight chain to our landfill. And that has huge implications for our waste cycle and the impacts that has on the receiving environment as well.
Thank you.
So,
And now Jean-Marc Hero.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I might as well talk here since I'm in the front row. Thanks for that, Wade. That's a great idea, and it's something that this community could...
There's your... Come closer. There's your device.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Wade. Just following on, before I talk about my little project there, that would be a great thing that a community group from this forum could take up for the Gold Coast, and Gecko's our host, so maybe it'd be a really great thing for Gecko to take on, and certainly from Griffith, I'm sure Gold Coast, we'd certainly love the idea and be part of it. Griffith Gold Coast would like to be part of it with you. So I guess I'm lucky last. Not necessarily, hopefully. Yeah, anyway. Within time limits. All I've got to say is this idea, the final of the list there, is really to embrace you. It's not my project, it's our project. And if it's not our project, it's not going to happen. So I'm really here to embrace you all and welcome you and invite you all to be part of it. Thank you. That'll be. Yeah.
And is Heidi Taylor still here? Yes, can we invite Heidi to speak, because she's also travelled a distance to come and visit us, and we'd love to hear what you've got to say. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. So our group was talking about marine debris. So I run Tangaroa Blue Foundation that coordinates the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. And we've seen that after really extreme weather events, the amount of debris washing up on our coastline increases significantly. We removed about 1.2 tonnes from 500 metres of beach in Cape York after Cyclone Nathan last year. So it's a huge amount of debris washing out of our cities and urban areas and washing up to really remote areas. So while we talked in our group about recycling and getting people to dispose of their waste properly, we think even more important than that is reducing what we're using to start with. And so Plastic Free July is a great event where people can sign up and take a pledge. It's not so easy as you think not to use single-use plastics for a whole month. So if that's a bit too much, you can pledge to reduce or not use the big four: straws, plastic bags, drink bottles and coffee cups, and take your own everywhere you go. And that's where we'd like to see this initiative start. We can stop what's washing out in our environment so much by stop using so much rubbish to start with, and everybody can take that home from today. So thank you.
That's a manageable plan for me, those four. Thank you, because I need to start somewhere. Everybody whose phone went off in this session, you now have to become a friend of Gecko and buy a tree before the end of the session. That was wasted energy and battery degradation that we didn't need. So be positive. It's a carbon offset. Buy that tree and become a friend of Gecko. Okay, we're opening it up to people on the floor to comment, to add to ask questions of all the people who just ran workshops. And we've got a starter. What am I being? I've got one here and I've got one there. You're one, you're two. Introduce yourself and then your question, comment or complimentary advice.
Yeah, my name's Gnomes. I was with Haiti in the Plastic Free, and just in relation to Plastic Free July, do we have somewhere to return our name badges today so that they can be reused? That's been organised already? Thank you very much. Well done.
Good, great, practical comment. Well done, good strategy. This is what we're looking for. Over here, number 2, and then we've got number 3 over here.
Hello, it's Nina again. Just put my glasses on. Probably when you get senior age. There were a couple of points of different things. I've just do a lot of travelling around Australia, and I've just been to England and a Rhine Danby River cruise. Every hotel, they have a sign, "We're going green." If you don't want your towels washed every day, to hang them up. Just about every place I went to, every place I went to, they actually kept washing the towels every day, so they contradicted their own signs, including ABT River cruise ship. So anyway, you try, but then they just kept washing them every day. And with the plastic, the New South Wales government and Queensland government are trying to reduce the ban of single-use plastic bags and also cash and carry scheme. New South Wales at the moment, ahead of the Queensland government, are definitely doing it. But we could all play a part by not using single plastic bags, because, as some people know, they're killing the whales, they're killing the dolphins and the sea turtles through ending up in the waterways. So it's not, well, the government's going to hopefully ban it, hopefully this year, but we should all not use single-use plastic bags as an individual action. And I keep my green bags in the car, and I just use them constantly. And the public are not stopping using single-use plastic bags. So unfortunately it has to be law, like South Australia introduced it years ago. But anyway, I'll keep it short. And the other thing I brought up with the group about the cycling was the problem of stormwater drainage. Now apparently there is a law where now any new development have to be able to dissipate storm water, and it can't just go down the gutters with all the rubbish that people throw out of their car and ends up just in the ocean and creek beds, but it doesn't apply to old developments. So there's some initiative there. And also, I put my hand up about the law. The government makes the laws, so we have to work on them. And we raised the problem of recycled water, that the public perception of recycled water is that it's just yuck. And we don't like using recycled water. And that's a big PR issue, like the time of Toowoomba running out of water at the drought. On the newspaper headlines said, we don't want human poo water. They don't worry about the fish poo in the dams and cattle going up to the water's edge. But there's this terrible misconception about recycled water, and we've got a water problem, but we don't use recycled water. And that's a big area where we need to work on more. And the public accept drinking recycled water. It's 98% treated. And Singapore apparently use recycled water, and so does London. Sorry? Sorry?
Singapore only 1%, but at least that's a start. That's 1% more than 0% here in Australia at the moment. Yeah.
I thought it was more than that.
Anyway,
I was in London.
We won't debate that point. You can talk after the session.
When I was in London recently, it was recycled water. Tastes no different to our water here. So anyway, I think
Thanks
I've talked
very much
enough.
for that.
Thanks.
And on that point of plastic bags, boomerang bags from recycled materials, a local product, local small business, a local young people's initiative. So in whatever way you can, support boomerang bags. Are they for... Yeah, please do. We need a microphone past you. No, we do, because we're streaming and we're recording. Thanks.
I've been working a lot with Tanya Potts just over the past 4 weeks. I met the lovely lady who started Boomerang Bags. She's an amazing, inspirational person with a fantastic team. You can start a community where you get just local sewers together. You don't need a lot of skill. You could probably learn from just YouTube how to sew. It's pretty much straight lines. You can make your own shopping bags. They're washable, obviously. Don't make my mistake. With my students, we used new fabric, and then I met Tanya and went, oh, okay, it's meant to be repurposed fabric. So that's my modification for next term. But she really is fantastic, and she's working on going into schools next term. We've been putting together a program where either schools will go to her and do workshops, learn all about what she's doing and how she's trying very hard to replace the dreaded plastic bag and all about that. And that's really exciting to hear that the government's thinking about changing those rules, because they do need to. And she's at Burleigh, so she's very easy to contact. She's got a website, and you can buy other products. She's got really cool stuff like this bag, which is a laptop bag. And she gets given fabric from all different companies. It's so cool. Hessian bags, banners, which I think your bags are made from. And she thinks of cool, well, she's got a creative team, it's not just her, but they think of cool things to do with that fabric to reuse it and to repurpose it. So, they're awesome. They're a really, really great company. And anyone can start a boomerang bag community. They're all over Australia. It's really taken off.
Thank you. Great. Back to the original speaker who had the microphone. Thank you.
Teamwork. It's on boomerang bags and TerraCycle, and the big thing with the circular economy is there needs to be creating demand for that. So it's amazing that there's communities that all help with TerraCycle or help sew bags. And then there needs to be an end user, so part of sustainable procurement or Griffith Uni's policy or whoever, to then say, okay, well, we're going to get those plastic park benches and we're going to install them in our school or our university or our council or something. We're going to use boomerang bags to work at the Gold Coast Convention Centre or some of those places as well. So remember that we need to create that demand, and as customers we can demand that, and also as organisations we can as well.
Thank you. And
good night. Good night.
We've got David. Sorry, is there another speaker with a microphone? No.
That was me. here at
Okay.
the front.
So, Pascal, are you going to comment on that last point, or is this a new point?
I'm going to just comment very briefly on the tourism point,
Yes.
if I may.
Yes.
If you're going to a hotel, and yes, they do wash your towels if you haven't put them down, I can see why that happens, because they might not have their systems, the cleaner might not be part of that value chain that has been passed down. Use the feedback mechanisms. Just about every hotel sends you a feedback form, or you have the little sheet. Tell them. The more of us that pick up on those issues, the more likely they're going to actually start listening and implement those in their staff training and right through the entire staff chain. There's a lot of turnover in staff within tourism, so you can see how some of those things do disappear and people don't. So they need constant reminding as well. Simple thing, just respond to those.
So spend the extra 5 minutes filling out your survey card or feedback form and dropping it at the front desk or where they ask you to. It's worth it. Excellent. Yes, our next speaker. Terrific.
Alistair Blacken. I just want to pick up on the psychological workshop we had and some of the things there. And I guess we've talked a lot about the knowledge and education in this workshop as a whole. But for me, the positivity and the outcomes that come from this are all about also the attitudes and behaviours, and we shouldn't underestimate the importance of what we project in our having attended something like this, just in every little action we do, and how that influences. So it's easy to be overwhelmed by, there's so much to do and all those difficult things, and as was mentioned here, you don't have to work at a national scale. Every bit we do is important, and it's not just the behaviours, it's also about the attitudes we project, and the attitude and behaviours feed off each other. So I guess that was just the point. I just thought we should remember that the influence that we're having is in an educational aspect, an attitudinal aspect, and a behavioural aspect, which gives us the credibility in that. And whatever we do, if we are true to it, then that'll be helping out.
Thanks, Alistair. Someone else would like a microphone to speak? Hands up. Yes, we have someone up here. Sheila, is it? I can't see in the sun glare. Great. Anyone else we can line up over this side who wants to speak? We can get the microphone ready. No? Thanks, Sheila.
Hi, Sheila Davis here. I was torn between going to Jamak Heroes, Borabai Biodiversity, Yarning Trails workshop, and the Sustainable Tourism workshops. And I went to his because I thought, here is a sustainable tourism project. And indeed, that is what he's planning. But one of the concerns that we have is that the city is currently about to sell 24 of our parks. I don't know how many people realise that. 24 parks that Gold Coast City owns are on the market. And one of them includes it's all just trees. It's not even a corner park that's not being used. So the thing that we talked about in the workshop was keeping the trees that we already have, including some that are already earmarked for being torn down. So I don't know how we go about doing that while we're getting this Borabai Trail going, but I think more of us need to contact our local councillors and make sure they're aware that we want our trees and our parks kept. But I think decisions have already been made, unfortunately. But the other thing I wanted to caution about with the Sustainable Tourism Awards is, some of you might know, we fought the cableway for 3 years, 20 years ago, and it keeps coming back. And the developers called that sustainable tourism. And so the definition of sustainable tourism, I think you have to look into, and Professor Ralph Buckley here at Griffith has come up with a definition, and we actually further defined it as tourism harnessed for conservation. So I think that we should all keep that in mind when we talk about ecotourism. It needs to be sustainably managed and in a natural environment, and have education and interpretation and support the local community, but it also needs to be harnessed for conservation rather than just exploiting the natural areas.
Thanks, Sheila. On that note, with the 24 public parks, a lot of them are on the urban strip where the most intensive urban living is currently taking place and going to become more intense. And the theory is, as long as we offset that with some parkland 40 kilometres away and you have to get in your car to drive there for the kids to have a park experience just to fly the kite or kick the football, we know that local, small suburban parks, people can walk there, they can get the kids on the trikes and cycle there, that the carbon footprint by having small urban parks in intensive living environments cuts down on the carbon footprint. So it's not just that it's public assets being sold off that have previously been used as open space and parks. It actually is curtailing that carbon footprint where you're required to travel from Broadbeach or Surfers Paradise a couple of kilometres or many kilometres to get your park experience. So it's a good point that you made. Thanks, Sheila. Any other person? Oh yes, we've got
already got
things.
Hi,
yes, so we're going to have a reply for Jean-Marc Hero, and then we have a speaker at the back there as well. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us of that. That's a really critical thing that we need to stop immediately. That's not something that we're going to change before the start of the Com Games. And I wasn't really aware of it until you mentioned it today. So I think this really needs to be acted on immediately by this group maybe as an outcome of this forum even. But we've got to make Gold Coast aware of this, and these are what I call biodiversity assets. They are assets just like any other asset that the Gold Coast has. So when they talk Econo Talk, which is all about assets, we need to be sure that these parks, even if they only have one tree in them, it's a biodiversity asset, and it's a place that we can plant out and create into an even more valuable asset. So the value of those parks and any fragments of forest that are left on the Gold Coast is enormous as a biodiversity asset. And hit the streets. This should be coming out of this conference as a major issue. And hit the Minister Miles, if you want to spend your millions of dollars, you have to give it to the Gold Coast government to buy their biodiversity assets off them and put them into Queensland biodiversity assets' hands, if anything could be so ridiculous.
Thank you. Yes. So farming practices in urban areas can also come under the same. Yes, terrific. We have a speaker at the back there. Please identify yourself and let us know what you're thinking.
Hi, I'm Kalindi. I was just building on what Sheila said about ecotourism. My high school students and I have done some exploration around that with camps and so forth. And we've been on an ecotourism sustainability camp, which loosely possibly using that. But what's interesting, I think, is voluntourism is something that's starting to develop. So we're currently doing a Cert 3 in active volunteering with the Year 10s and with Wild Mob, which we actually pay to volunteer, basically. But you go out there to do conservation projects and so forth, and that's like your holiday or like your experience, which is pretty cool. So there's some good things which are engaging young people and students and about it being conservation focused, and you're actually going out there to do the work. As opposed to sort of, perhaps being a bit more commercially pitched.
And up the back here.
If you want any more ammunition to put in your letter to council or your argument to council about saving those 24 parks,
yeah, that's it.
If you want some more ammunition for your letter or your submission to council to save those 24 parks, each mature age tree might be worth $22,000 in ecosystem services per year. And if you count every tree there, and if it's a younger tree than a mature tree, it could be half the amount. There's your financial argument for the council as well.
Thank you.
And if you need references for that, I can help.
Thank you. And your name, sorry, again?
Donnell Davis.
Thank you. Someone else? We have someone up the back here, thanks, Sally. And someone else on this side in the meantime. Panel? Yes, start straight away until we get the microphone.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to also respond to the issue of the 24 parks. I hadn't heard that, and I was incredibly shocked. So to pick up on Danelle's point that there's a whole lot of ways of cutting that, as well as describing them as biodiversity assets, and that they have that economic value, but they also have a very important public health. They're a very important public health asset. So, I mean, as you pointed out, it's getting people active, giving them the opportunity, both for children and parents and other members of the community, to get health benefits from walking, and therefore reducing their risk of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, etc. And the health benefits that arise from interacting with nature are very significant. They're not only physical but mental, and I think that needs to be a really key argument as well. That's actually a threat to people's health and well-being if you remove the opportunity for them to be able to engage with nature and access parkland as part of urban amenity.
Thank you. And Pascal, are you on the same point? Do you want to make a comment? No? Okay, we'll go to the back there.
Okay.
Yes?
So I'll just mention one thing really quickly about the farming co-op. Sorry, about the farming co-op. There is one that I'm aware of on the Gold Coast called Organic Family. You might want to connect with them. They do...
Sorry, the name is?
Organic Family.
Organic Family,
and
thank
they
you.
do, it is they all organic vegetables and fruits. They box it up and send it to people, and they have volunteers, packaging and everything. But I think they're more focused on some children, about the children getting good nutritious food, but might be someone you not connect with and see what they're doing and see if you can, you know, network with, I guess. And also with the parks, it really is the political climate at the time. So whoever's in power will obviously, what we have now is very pro-development. So if you don't want to see your parks get bulldozed and put houses on, be very careful with your vote. That's basically what it comes down to. Whoever, if you have good politicians and good legislation, then they will protect the parklands. So,
yes, voting's very important.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. We're going to go over to Rose in a minute. We don't call it pro-development, we call it arrested development. Anyway, that's the activists in me coming out again. I'm sorry. I said I'd be moderate all day. Okay, Rose?
I was just going to make a distinction, just in terms of food systems. There are some buyers clubs and indeed wholesalers who only buy organic. Now, we've got a problem in Australia where the number of organic farmers has dropped because these organic wholesalers are buying from cheap parts of the world. So it's an organic industrial system. The system hasn't changed. So the buyers clubs and the cooperatives that we're talking about buy only from this region. They eat only seasonal. So it's a really, really important distinction. And that's in anything, clothing or anything, where we're substituting cheap organics, which is really killing our own regional farmers, the local economy, so the circular system that someone spoke about before. We have to have consumers who buy only from this region and make that distinction rather than just the industrial organic model. It's a really, really important distinction to make. Otherwise, you're just causing organic farmers to commit suicide here in Australia rather than sort of... and that has a ripple effect all around the world.
Thank you. And Rose?
No?
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, at the plenary sessions in a conference, we come up with resolutions. We've got 23 resolutions from 23 workshops. Can I add one more that we specifically exert all our efforts to saving those 23 POCs as an outcome of this conference?
So all our efforts, another action plan, is to lobby, write and pressure to save those parks. Now, I have to admit the number needs to be identified clearly because there are some open public spaces that are disused near industrial sites, but there's no reason why they can't become parks for the workers to have their lunch where they buy locally, to have their sangha or whatever. So even if they argue, oh, they're not all used parks, they potentially are parks, even if they're in industrial zones where people work. Thanks for that, Rose. Anybody else? We're getting close to me winding up the session. So, they all come out at the last minute when the pressure's on. 1, 2, 3, then we'll see how we're going for time. So it's 1, 2, 3. You're second.
Hi, is that on? Can you hear me? Yeah, cool.
Speak right into it like you're eating an ice cream.
Hi. Sure. I'm Daniela Texera. I'm a PhD student at the University of Queensland. And I have a question, but two things before I get to that. The first thing is next week is the Society for Conservation Biology Conference in Brisbane. And the lab that I'm a part of, we're organising a social media flash mob to protest against the proposed changes to land clearing laws in Queensland. If anybody's interested in joining the flash mob, let me know. And basically all you have to do, if you have a Facebook or Twitter account, you sign up to that and it will automatically post to Facebook or Twitter on your behalf. So thousands of people all at once will flood social media with these protests. There's proposed changes to the land clearing laws in... Okay, anyway. Yeah, so, yeah, anyway, so there's that. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have just joined up to Plastic Free July, so I'm really excited we were talking about that. And I'm going to be blogging about it, and it is actually quite hard. So congrats to anybody who manages to do that. And my question, we've talked a lot about localisation and local food and all of this. And I guess one thing that I sort of struggle with is knowing, is there a place for maybe non-local but sustainably harvested food or food products? Sustainably harvested or sustainably produced food from other countries, for instance, like community-based conservation where people are maybe not clearing land in favour of sustainable agriculture over there.
Back to Rob.
Yeah, so we've just completed it's now out to the community for consultation. It's called the Brisbane Food Plan, but it can be replicated anywhere. And we've divided the world into 6 zones, and we looked at food through 4 lenses: a human health lens, an economic lens, a social justice lens, and an economic lens. And there was 13 food groups. So the obvious ones are obviously we get coffees and spices and teas and various things from Zone 6, which is the whole of the world. In our plan with Food Connect, we won't even distribute fresh lettuces and herbs and those sort of things from Food Connect. They have to be grown from backyards, rooftop gardens, urban farms, that sort of thing. But we're in the transition to that ultimate end goal. The inverse result is as you get a stronger local economy, remember, like Food Connect, it's measured at, for every dollar you spend at Food Connect is $23 return back into the local community, whereas if you spend at Coles and Woolies, you actually have a negative, like that dollar is less because of the externalities, the environmental and the social externalities that are attributed to Coles and all those other things. So as we transition towards that, the local economy becomes so strong that you can actually start to trade really strongly with a lot of these other countries. So it's quite a complex field, but in that transition, you just need to sort of make decisions based through those 4 lenses, and if you make decisions through those 4 lenses, or even one of those lenses, you'll end up making a really good decision. So...
Can you repeat the 4 again, please?
Yeah, so you look through an economic lens, so is this going to benefit? So are all the externalities that are normally left out of the balance sheet, are they included in the price of the food that you're getting? Like your health, so, you know, what's the point in eating an orange from California out of season? It does absolutely nothing for you. And what's the point in eating a lettuce that's been transported forever where the nutrient density is gone and you've just transported a whole heap of water all over the countryside? The human health lens, social justice lens, so has this block of chocolate got blood in it? So Cadbury, pretty much all of them have got blood on their hands. And then the 4th one is around ecology. So the energy or the emoji, the embodied energy in growing that food. So waste is a big part of that sort of thing. Transporting food all over the place, refrigeration, all of those sorts of things. So if you look through those 4 lenses, you'll actually make really good choices around your food choice, and we'll move to a better system.
Thanks, Rob. And the second last speaker for this session.
Hi, it's Anne Royko from Griffith
Right
Uni.
into the microphone, thanks.
Griffith Uni School of Medicine. I just want to pick up on, Brendan Mackey earlier talked about if we could develop a sustainability plan for the Gold Coast. Climate change plan. Okay, sorry, Brendan. But as a part of this, I'm hearing so many different initiatives coming out of this forum. How do we develop this one-stop shop or resource centre? Like many groups want to put together resources for people, what's on the Gold Coast for food or for recycling or for everything else. I'd like to propose we produce, if there's one already, tell me about it, but some sort of local Gold Coast resources for sustainability, climate change that are healthy, sustainable, that different groups could pick up on then and insert through their own organisations.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that as an NGO, a volunteer group, and the other volunteer groups, we are worked to our maximum in trying to provide that sort of information in the areas of our interest. I would imagine a funded institution would be in a better position to harness all of the diverse interests into some holistic centre, but I know for a fact that the Geckos and Save Our Spits, we are maxed out as volunteers, and of course Save Our Spit, it will never be eligible for funding from this current council because we choose not to be compromised or blackmailed by that sort of donation. So perhaps it's an institution, and it could be a research project, or it could be a research centre, or it could be an application for funding within the institution's cultures. But that's just my suggestion. I would not like to see Gecko be harnessed with that as an outcome because they're already stretched, as we know. But thank you. I think it's needed for sure. Any other comments on that little bit? Any other comments on an institution or a way to harness all of these strategies so you can go in, if it's water, you know where to go on the website or who to contact. If it's food, sustainability, all of those things, there's a myriad of things that we could put as a resource centre, either through an app, a website or a research centre.
So for food, there's two. AFSA, the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, they have links, so that's a collaboration of all of the disparate consumer groups, farmer groups, all around Australia. And Food Connect Foundation site has many links as well as the Food Connect Brisbane site. So both those sites will have lots of links for what's going on all around Australia. There's another one called Sustain as well. It's all around networks, food networks. So that's based in Melbourne as well.
But I think, Rob, the point is that people don't know they're interested in food sustainability, but if they go to a central database, then they can go, oh, there's food, there's water, there's wetlands, there's sustainable tourism, because that's what we've discussed over the... So we need a framework in which we can then source those when we find our areas of action that we know we're motivated by, or areas of action we didn't know existed that we now want to jump on board. I'm getting the wind up. We're going to have the last comment and speech, but we can mix informally at the end of the formal closing. We've got... Who was the... Okay, I'll just see how we're going for time. We're just about over time, but this was the third person that... Yeah, this is the third person, yes? It's Alastair again, was it? No, it was down here. Sorry, Doral had the microphone in order first. Doral, take the microphone. I'll just see how my minders are going. I'm sure we'll get back to you, Alastair. Doral?
Just on that last subject, I think we need an app.
Okay, short and sharp. Okay, business school, Griffith University, IT experts, we need an app to harness everything that's happened in the last 2 days.
One more app.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is probably a question. I was told that the Newman government changed that it was the mayor now who has the responsibility of divvying up the funds to all the councillors. So the mayor here rules, he can blackmail all the councillors to do what he wants, and if they try to go against him, he can just sort of hold back the money.
Okay, so let's just harness that in a framework. The laws were changed where the mayor is responsible for generating the budget, which then goes to council for discussion and approval. And that law was changed under Newman. It gives them more executive powers over how the budget looks and where the budget is spent. And when you have a block of councillors who are like-minded, independent councillors that didn't declare their like-mindedness before they were elected, then you have a situation where the vote to support that budget is in place. It's an anachronism, or it's an extension to the powers of the mayor, who's just one councillor with a deciding vote on the Gold Coast, 15 votes, of which the mayor's is one. But yes, we've put in submissions to the local government minister to reverse those sort of executive financial budgetary powers, and there are other groups who've put in submissions, and we will keep lobbying the jurisdiction of the local government minister. But I agree, and a lot of community groups, the community cabinet, put in submissions to try and change that. So action is taking place from the community point of view. We're waiting to see what the response is at the state government level. We're going to have to, unless there's any more to that, we'll give Alistair one final closing comment or statement, and then we're going to go to celebrating the Actioneers and closing the conference.
Thanks very much. So it's just a comment in relation to the question over here about where do we find those institutions that might take on that. Natural resource bodies have that sort of role, and across Queensland many of them have been trying to build into their regional natural resource plans provisions for web-based wikis and ways of accessing all of these different groups and bodies that are involved in sustainability. It's a little bit dysfunctional at the moment in that field with a lot of governance changes happening. At the moment, officially it would be healthy waterways and catchments that could take that role up. They're in the middle of a change themselves, but it's quite a large issue, and I definitely reiterate it's not something for a volunteer organisation. It needs an enduring institution behind it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So that's a message of support. We're going to finish there, but can I ask those people who signed on as Actioneers, before we close officially, to come down and get their Actioneer badges and to get a photo op for publicity. So anyone who signed on to one of those forms in their workshop who wants to stay in touch through a closed Facebook page with a mentor, thank you. And if you could stand just here. And any of the workshop leaders get in the photo as well, I reckon.
If they've already got a badge, they don't
Yeah.
get one.
If you got an Actioneer badge yesterday, you won't get a second badge, but you will get a second photo. So, football team photo? Yes. Yes, yes, yeah. Yes. This is not the end of the conference. We will have an official close after this photo op. Squeeze up, shoulder to shoulder. Use the body heat. Squeeze up. Tall people at the back. Taller people at the back. If you can see the camera can see you. Squeeze across, squeeze across, squeeze across. I'm not in the photo, block me out. I was in yesterday's, I'm good. Squeeze up, squeeze up, squeeze up. Okay, tell us when to smile, El. Squeeze in a bit more, snuggle up.
Come to the yesterday's. We need Lois at the front. Yeah. On the front, please, Lois.
Yeah. She likes doing that.
Yes.
Everyone should hold her in the front.
Cuddle in. If you can see the lens, she can see you. All right, serious?
Cheers.
It's always hard to do that.
The face.
Yeah. Thank you. Lois, are you going to think? And then you're going to have a closing statement with Brendan. I'll do that quickly now. Okay. As you settle down, we're finishing off. Thank you for your patience. We're going to have a closing statement from some of the main protagonists in running this conference. Before that, just to let you know that the Actioneers, some of the mentors that you've nominated, We'll be mingling in the foyer for you to just go up and reintroduce yourself or introduce yourself again. The Actioneers will be contacted through your email address and invited to be a part of a closed Facebook group to do with your priority action area. We've got official closing statements, but I'd like to thank Griffith University, GECO, the Gold Coast and Hinterland Environment Council, the Queensland Government through the Department of Environment and Heritage Protection, Green NRG Company, previously LED Tech, the conference supporters, which include local surf clubs, Surf Rider Foundation, Miss Essence, OCC Apparel, Mudgee Bar Rural Fire Brigade, Tangaroa Blue, I did say Surf Rider Foundation, Barefoot Wines and Climate Wave Enterprises. With that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Lois Levy and to Brendan Mackey to do closing statements. Thank you.
That light really is bright, isn't it? So just very briefly, I wanted to first of all thank you all so much for coming yesterday and today. It's very inspiring to be standing up there and seeing there's more Actioneers down on this stage than there are people left in the seats. So a round of applause for yourself. And I very much hope that you all see this, because I certainly, that's my hope, as the beginning of a new initiative here on the Gold Coast. I hope this is the beginning of, as we say here, a community of practice, if you like, for climate change for good on the Gold Coast. And I really hope in 10 years' time we can look back and see this as a start of something really exciting new time here on the Gold Coast. And also want to say from my, and on behalf of my academic colleagues here at Griffith University, we're very committed to working with the Gold Coast community in taking some of these actions that we've talked about here today forward, and I'll be following up with Lois and our friends and colleagues at GECO in working out how we might be able to support some of these initiatives going forward. So thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to working with you going forward in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Well, like Brendan, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along to the conference. It was an idea that had a birth round about May last year, and we've had the most amazing team of volunteers meeting every fortnight since May last year to put this together. And it's been an extraordinary effort, and I really appreciate that support. You can never just do it on your own, it's always got to be a team. And I'm sure all of you who've decided that you might be able to do some sort of action following this conference will find that you'll gather around your own support teams. The Actioneer program is a new initiative. I have to be honest and say I don't really know exactly how it's going to work. As far as I know, it's never been done before. So, but we're going to give it a go because you can come to a conference, you can hear wonderful things, and then nothing really happens after that. So this time we're going to try and follow it through to support each and every one of you who want to do something. You'd be interested to know that the Minister for Environment wants to know how it goes. So let's give him a pleasant surprise, shall we? It would be nice. I'd really like to thank not only my volunteers but also Griffith University. They've been absolutely amazing in the support they've given for this conference. So I think the main thing is that we do go forward with a sense of hope, a sense that there are positive things out there that we can do. All the literature that you're reading now about climate change certainly gives us the realities, but it also gives us lots of opportunities to change things, to move to a sustainable society, to change attitudes. So go home, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your work colleagues, tell them what a great experience you've had, because I hope you have had, and let them know that things are changing. Might seem slow at first, but it will be like a snowball, and it will happen, and I certainly want to see it all happen before I shuffle off on this mortal coil. So every little bit helps. We will have to show the politicians that it can be done, because I don't honestly think at the moment we can have much faith in any of them. So, but if the community gets behind it, we'll show them that it can be done, and I'm really happy to have you all join me in that effort. Thank you.
Couple of other sponsors, Naturescape, Plankton Productions, AYCC, but I think we should get Brendan and Lois to stand for tumultuous applause for the effort. But wait on, hold your horses, there's a treat. Catherine is running another rare and endangered plant species walk for 15 minutes around the campus. If you want to debrief and get some fresh air and some knowledge, meet Catherine up the top in the foyer, I believe that's correct, for the 15-minute endangered plant species walk. So that is on for sure. Other workshop facilitator mentors will be mingling, go and have a chat. But please, Brendan and Lois, could you please stand and take your bows, because... Yes. And would all the volunteers as well, please stand and take your applause. Volunteers, Ali, volunteers. Yep. Thank you. And to the Griffith Uni and audio visual people who made us heard and seen. Thank you. Those panel presenters who didn't get their boomerang bags, come down and get them now. Goodbye, safe travels and low carbon footprint travels.